Good morning, folks. Welcome to today's second episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels, and we are going back into the sheltered workshops, and we're going to be going into employment first. I'm going to admit, before we get into the brief disclaimers, that I thought really hard about showing you some bragging rights, which is basically my baby, how we got the Employment First initiative to become a part of and receive some of the funding of that MoDMH receives. But I'm going to be bigger than that and, not toot my own horn. Okay? Just know I am insanely proud of it. And I am also insanely proud that they continue to push it in spite of the pushback that we get back from our own Congress and Senate. All right. Disclaimers, folks, and we make them short and sweet for these particular videos. You are going to hear on this channel, simply because I was raised by a truck driver who's also a veteran, some profanities escape my mouth now and again. So, if your child is 16 and younger and watching this, please, parental supervision is advised, all right? Okay, so you've heard us mention during the two previous videos in regards to the sheltered workshops, the development of what has become nationwide and statewide, especially for myself, the Employment First initiative. Now, this is coming from the Autism Self-Advocacy Network, also known as ASAN. And to say that everybody was working together is an understatement, folks. We had ASAN. We've got People First. We've got MoDMH. We've got APSI-MO. Yeah. And I was involved with APSI-MO and ASAN, of course. So, we're going to go over Employment First, what it is and why it matters. All props to the Autism Self-Advocacy Network. Now, little disclaimer. If you actually want to donate for anything that has to do with autism, and you want to actually do something to help people, don't go to Autism Speaks. These are your people. These are people with the diagnosis who's actually fighting for us. So please, my Exhibit A, all right? Do not buy into the whole autism awareness, stupid Autism Speaks bull, okay? All right, so let's get into it here. Introduction. Employment First is an idea about how to help promote people with disabilities get good jobs. Employment First says that the government should help every person with a disability who wants to work find real jobs in the community for real money. Some states have their own Employment First laws. Missouri. This page will tell you more about what Employment First is, what state Employment First laws are like, and how you can join the fight for real work for people with disabilities. What Employment First is. Employment First is an idea. Employment First says that the government should help every person with a disability who wants to work find a real job in the community for real money. This marries real closely into transition age folks, and as we know, this is my special area here. That means disabled people should be able to work if we want to. Disabled people should be able to work in our communities. We should be able to work in the same place as non-disabled people. The fact that we even have to say this, and it's still 2023, folks, I'm sorry, but inclusive and supportive of diversity, my ass. But moving on. Disabled people should be able to get the supports we need to work. Disabled people should get the same wage that non-disabled people do. I do not understand why in 2023 this is still an argument. I really don't. Just know that I am hell-bent to make sure that my little nephew does not have to fight the same war that I had to in order to be able to go out and live his life as he gets older. Just know that. Disabled people should get real work for real pay as first choice instead of the government trying something else before it tries that. See, that's what they did with me. They tried real hard to get me into the sheltered workshops, but thankfully my mom and I are very, very stubborn individuals. Mom censored herself, which is very unusual for her, but yeah, it didn't fly. It didn't fly at all. But it flies with a lot of parents who are conditioned to accept less than par results for their kids. But let's move on here. In the toolkit Real Work for Real Pay, a self-advocate's guide to employment policy, we talk a lot about what Employment First is. You can get more information on Employment First by reading it. We're going to go over some of the other links. I may not include them, but I'm going to include the one from our site, which is old because I helped put it up. I'm sorry, no. I'm going to be glad that I was able to play a small role in that, folks. I really am. Why it matters. Employment First is important because lots of people think that people with disabilities who need a lot of support cannot work at a real job. Because of these wrong ideas, companies do not give people with disabilities a chance. Instead, disabled people end up working in segregated places like sheltered workshops. But it's not just the businesses, folks. You've got people inside state departments. You've got people who are a part of schools. You've got a whole lot of things going on that tries to gear us towards shelter workshops, Social Security, food stamps, and Medicaid, and keeping us beneath the poverty line. This is part of a much larger fight so that we do not have to continue to live in poverty forever. But let's move on. We'll get into that as hopefully I will have another vacation before the end of this year. Here's hoping, right? All right, shelter workshops are bad for us. People with disabilities in shelter workshops perform the same task over and over. They work in places where there are no workers without disabilities. They make less than minimum wage, which is the smallest amount your boss is allowed to pay you for your work. Most of us want real jobs in the community. Employment First is an idea that helps us get those jobs instead of jobs in sheltered workshops. I also want to add it helps us actually get what I like to call a living wage. An actual insurance so we can do things like see the dentist. As someone who's been on Medicaid in this state, I can tell you that the reason why it's taken from 2008 until 2022 for me to actually be able to go and see a dentist is because Medicaid did not cover it, and because a good majority of the places around here that weren't call centers did not hire me. Point blank, period. And not all the call centers out here actually pay enough that I would be able to take home a decent paycheck and be able to pay rent and eat, and also be able to afford to go to the dentist. There's a lot of problems here, which will probably be its own series at some point. Employment First is not just an idea that nobody listens to. The U.S. government is committed to Employment First. This means that it has to try and set up its government agencies and programs so that when people with disabilities are trying to find jobs, integrated employment is always the first choice offered. This means Employment First is an idea that makes change happen for the better. What it doesn't bring in is part of the out here in Missouri for DMH. Was it Employment First? Yes, but it wasn't just that. It also included steps into secondary education as well. You're welcome. Yeah, that was a little braggy. I'm sorry. The government and Employment First. The U.S. Department of Labor does employment policy for the United States government. The U.S. government supports Employment First. The main way it supports it is by changing U.S. government agency policies to be more like Employment First, making sure the state governments know about Employment First, making sure that state agencies that help people get jobs make integrated employment the first choice for people with disabilities. A part of the U.S. Department of Labor, the Office of Disability Employment Policy, ODEP, works on Employment First. ODEP helps other U.S. agencies like the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, which runs Medicaid. ODEP works with state Medicaid agencies and writes documents that tell them at Medicaid money can be used to help people get jobs. Now, a lot of us, myself included, that got involved with the job programs, all of that was funded through Medicaid, folks. This is why Medicaid funding is important. It has a lot more to do than just dealing with our medical issues. And we keep losing money out of it every single year. Just saying. American job centers should follow the employment first. AGCs give job training, support, free internet job search access, and other services to people who are trying to find a job. WIOA said they should be the place people looking for a job go for a lot of the help they need. WIOA also says the AJCS have to give equal access to their services. AJCS should work with ODEP to make sure when working with people with disabilities that they work with us and help us get lots of different integrated jobs to meet our needs. AGCS should be working together with vocational rehabilitation VR agencies. We are out here, by the way. We've been doing it since about circa 2012, 2013. Doing both these things will help AGCS make employment first a reality. Vocational rehabilitation agencies help people with disabilities get jobs. Vocational rehabilitation agencies have to try to help people with disabilities get integrated employment, not just segregated employment. This is part of what it means for the government to make integrated employment the first choice for people with disabilities. You can advocate for the employment first by telling the government you want it to support our right to real jobs for real money. You can call the U.S. Department of Labor, or ODEP as we call it, and tell them you support their work on employment first. State employment first laws. Over 35 states have some kind of employment first law. 21 of these states say that integrated employment is the first choice for people with disabilities. This means that the state tries to change their agencies and policies to make it easier for people with disabilities to get real jobs. For example, Illinois passed a law called the Employment First Act. The law meant that people in Illinois tried lots of things to help people with disabilities get real jobs, like giving more money to programs that help disabled people in Illinois find jobs they want to do, teaching service providers how to better help support people get jobs. State employment first laws work. Here's another example. The state of Washington does employment first. Since integrated employment is their first choice for people with disabilities there, many people work real jobs for real money than in other states, 3 times as many. You can help fight for the good employment laws in your state by calling your disability service agencies to ask about what they are doing to help people get real jobs for money, calling your state legislators and asking them to pass state employment first laws. Now, I'm going to tell you what they respond to, what they actually respond to, from my experience. Showing up in person. If you want to know how we got anything done in the state of Missouri, because we have been GOP run from over the last decade, make yourself a public constant nuisance. You go to their offices and you hang out like you're getting ready to have a day with them. Like, bring lunch. It can be an all-day process. Now, how would be hanging around their doors eating lunch while sitting down on a hard floor make a difference? It's how we did it, folks. It's how we did it. It was a combination of pressure from us advocates being constant daily nuisances, getting places like ABSI-MO, which is one of the big major pushers of this concept out here in Missouri, as well as the People First groups. And, I hate to say it because every time I had to do it made me feel like I needed 9 showers, but reminding them how many of their constituents are disabled or have family members that are disabled, how many of the voting public you make up, and also threatening to go public that they don't support people with disabilities, and getting real jobs and getting real insurance. You'd be surprised how far that goes. Just saying. People out here are stubborn. Paul can tell you that. He's worked with our state government.
Oh, yeah.
You got to make yourself a nuisance or be Paul. Paul just calls the government, like one of our former governors, he just calls them out. Like, actually, that's a lie.
No, that was one of our representatives. I
Well,
called him a liar to his face, and he laughed and said, "Yep, you got me."
Meanwhile, I have to be annoying, folks. It's not fair. All right, so this is from my old stomping grounds. God, I miss it. If only they would have been willing to make me full-time. But here is our massive document. God, I remember this. That's technical assistance and services. We've got, if you take a look at all of this, folks, in fact, I'm going to make sure to copy this link so that you can see it. We kind of went in depth because there are individuals who want to do the employment first that need assistive devices, technical devices to help them on the job, as well as the training, the mentoring, and the coaching. So that's kind of what this looks like here. We have our own website. And here's APSI. As you can see here, you want to talk about resources, folks. All right, we're going to go ahead and close out on this one. And this is kind of the closeout of our series here. I will probably, when I have the time, who knows, right? I will go a little bit more into this side of things. But for now, we're going to go ahead and close out. I do appreciate your time. And as always, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you have a good one. Bye-bye, everyone.